Hello, so I am joining Jane Austen July this year. I've never properly joined in with Jane Austen July before. Last year I started rereading Sense and Sensibility in that month, but this year I am going to be following some of the prompts, as well as also finishing the last novel that I have yet to reread of Jane Austen's. Part of the reason why I started my reread was because although I'm very familiar with all of Jane Austen's stories, having been basically brought up on their adaptation since I was a very small child, I'd actually only read each novel once, and so I really wanted to go back to the source material to, I guess, rediscover the stories in their original form. So I love that finishing off my reread has coincided with this event. So the first prompt is read one of Jane Austen's main 6 novels, and so the last one I have to read is Persuasion, which is the last novel that she wrote and also was published posthumously. I remember this being one of my favorites when I first read these books, so I'm very excited to reread it. With my reread as well, I was reading her books in the order in which she wrote them, except I got confused and mixed up Emma and Mansfield Park, so I actually read those 2 out of order. But I feel like the principle has been kind of the same, going from reading Northanger Abbey, which is so clearly a book written by a younger person and written by someone not as experienced in writing as some of her later novels. And Persuasion is always known as her most mature work. I may cheat a little bit and actually start reading this today, and I'm still in June currently. The second prompt is read something written by Jane Austen that is not one of her main novels. And so I recently bought Lady Susan, The Watsons and Sanditon. I've never read any of these unfinished works. The reason for that being is the copy that we had of these stories in my house when I first read her novels was one that my dad still had from when he was in high school and he had to study it. And so there was a remarkable amount of rude things written on the cover, and it was very old and falling apart, and just did not appeal to 14-year-old me as something that I wanted to read. So I now have this lovely new fresh copy, and yeah, I'm really excited to read Jane Austen's written words that I have never read before. The third prompt is read a piece of non-fiction about Jane Austen or about her time. I just did a quick search in my library to see what was available, and the one that appealed to me the most was Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley, mainly because I know of Lucy Worsley. I'm pretty sure I've seen her on some kind of British historical TV. She was really well known for some kind of meme. I don't even remember the contents of the meme. All I really know about this book is that it looks at Jane Austen's life through the houses and places that she lived in, and seeing as I cannot go on my holiday to the UK that I'd originally planned for September this year, and obviously that holiday had involved going to Jane Austen's house and going to Bath, I will just have to make do with this book until it is safe to travel again. The fourth prompt is read a retelling of a Jane Austen book, and I just coincidentally was planning to read this book anyway, so it's kind of lucky that it's one of the prompts. This is The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow, and this copy I actually got free from my work, which is one of the few but very major perks that I get from my job, is that the features team obviously get sent a lot of review copies of books, and normally, or at least last year, they had a whole pile of these books for sale and the money went towards charity, but for some reason this year they've decided to give a whole bunch away for free, possibly because our office is being renovated, so there's probably just no space to store anything right now. But this was the one book that caught my eye. So this book is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice through the perspective of Mary Bennet. I've never been particularly interested in Jane Austen retellings, but this one has been getting such good reviews lately that I sort of thought I'd give it a go, and because I'd always thought that Mary Bennet was a character who had potential to be so interesting, if I like it, I might seek out some more of these kinds of books. If there are any really good quality ones that you know of, do let me know in the comments. I think in my mind, Jane Austen retellings have a reputation for just wanting to see Elizabeth and Darcy do things that never would have been written about by Jane Austen at the time, and I'm just not particularly interested in that. But thoughtful retellings of the time is definitely something I think worth reading. I'm going to put this book down because it's really heavy, but I will say about retellings, although I've never read Death at Pemberley by P.D. James, I have watched the adaptation of that book several times. There was one point when it was on ABC TV just like every other month, it felt like, and I just always happened to switch it on while the show was on and I couldn't not watch it. It's such a beautiful version of the story, well, a sequel of Pride and Prejudice with a sort of bit of murder mystery thrown into it. I also love the casting in it because it is a sequel, we get to see Elizabeth and Darcy a little bit older than they're normally cast, and also cast with people who don't necessarily look like people think Darcy and Lizzie should look, but definitely, as far as acting goes, are perfectly cast in my opinion. So that sort of leads nicely into the next prompt, which is watch a direct screen adaptation. I'm pretty sure I have seen every single direct screen adaptation that was made, probably in the last 30 years. But I feel like watching the 95 film version of Persuasion after I've read the book, I might do that, because that is such a beautiful film. It's one of those really naturalistic 90s style adaptations where I don't even know if they used any lighting. I think it was literally all natural light and candlelight, and it is amazing. But a film I did want to mention, which kind of ties into one of the other prompts, which is read a book by a contemporary author of Jane Austen, which I haven't picked one for because I don't think I will have time. But with films, there is a 2013 film called Belle, directed by Amma Asante, which is based on a 1779 painting featuring a black girl called Dido Belle with her white cousin Elizabeth. And the film probably takes a lot of poetic license because I don't think a lot is actually known about the real life Dido in the painting. But in the film, she gets involved with the abolition of the slave trade in the UK. And I watched it a few years ago, but I remember loving it and thinking it was, a really fantastic and interesting film. And you get that beautiful period adaptation feeling, but being about something much more political than we usually see in those types of films. So the last prompt is watch a modern adaptation. I don't know of that many modern adaptations of Jane Austen novels in the way that you have Clueless, which is obviously a direct adaptation of Emma. I feel like Shakespeare has way more options for that kind of thing. But one film I haven't seen is Austenland, which is another 2013 film. I think it's also based on a book about a woman who is crazy about Jane Austen, who basically goes to like the Jane Austen version of Disneyland. It does not get very good reviews at all. My sister's watched it and she said it was terrible, but I'm still really curious to see it. And it also stars JJ Field, who plays my favorite version of Henry Tilney in an adaptation of Northanger Abbey, so I feel like I need to watch it just for him. So those are my plans for Jane Austen July. If you are participating, let me know what you are reading and watching in the comments. I hope you are all doing well, and I'll see you soon. Bye!